coffee ain't so bad. Honestly, the thing more than coffee is I've like finally been kind of like buck broken, and I'm like starting to get to bed at a more reasonable time, a little bit more consistently.
Nice.
Um, a bit more consistently, not like decidedly every time, but
Were you a late night person before that? Like
yeah,
before
it's kind
having
of
a
my
kid and stuff?
that's kind of one of my vices is
Yeah.
just staying up a little bit too late, which I think is like really, really, really common these days. I think a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
people don't get enough sleep.
No, I
Um,
mean, there's a whole litany of reasons, but I also think the culture's kind of shifted in that way. Like, it's really common to not be a morning person, and then that also kind of like conflates to being a late night person.
I like this is actually funny because I've been reading like a self help book that I was given uh, for Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I'm not usually into these kinds of things, but it's like it's basically about coming up with like a good morning routine,
Oh,
uh,
nice.
and I'm like starting to get more and more convinced that I just don't really think that the framing of like, are you a morning person or not a morning person is even like very helpful or like legitimate.
Yeah,
Because
I agree.
I know that it like it kind of is a thing, like of course there are certain people who like getting up in the morning a little more naturally and certain people that don't. But I think that that label creates a foothold for people to just identify,
Oh, yeah.
their lack of their lack of like discipline and structure in the
Mm-hmm.
morning. And yeah, I
Just
mean,
like any label does, like any mental illness, like you just identify with that, and then you just kind of take on the characteristics more and more.
I
Same
know
kind
that
of
this is
thing.
I know it's not what you meant, but I kind of like the idea of like labeling not being a morning person as a mental illness.
It kind of is, dude. A little bit.
It's mental illness adjacent, as
Yeah.
people would say.
Accepting it and then like not doing anything about it if you have the will to change, that would be mental illness.
That's definitely getting in the territory of mental illness. I'll agree with you there.
But I do
Um,
think it's more malleable than because like I used to not be a morning person, and that also maybe kind of dovetailed with me being an adolescent teenager as well, and like kind of a young adult.
yeah.
But now that I have a job where I work outside and I have to be up like 7 a.m., I like getting up with the sunrise and like being up. I feel like I got a head start on my day. You got something going on in the mic.
Yeah, that's the
Oh, is that
coffee
coffee
grinder. Hold on.
beans? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
dude, we be grinding them fresh here, dude.
That's nice, dude. That's real barista mode.
It is. Well, both of us worked in coffee shops, so we're kind of
Oh, you make a
you know,
mean cup of coffee. A damn fine cup of coffee, I
a damn
imagine.
fine cup of coffee. Honestly, the thing is, I don't even make that. I mean, it's not even like that. We're not like those crazy people that like spritz a little bit of water onto our beans and shit. Here, hold on, we're going again.
Oh man, it's really fine. It's not a big of an issue. But I just heard it. I didn't know if it was like a mic malfunction, and I wanted to catch it if it was.
I said that she's messing up the podcast jokingly, and she didn't respond. So I think she might
Oh
actually be
fuck!
mad now.
No,
She didn't hear me. She didn't hear me. All right, cool, cool. We're back. Oh god, it's going again.
it's kind of nice. It's like a background. It's like a green noise. You know how they
Yeah,
have
it's
all
like
these
helping
green
with my
noises.
tinnitus right now.
Yeah, yeah. It's reworking the brain and the neural pathways. That's
Is
the big rage, though. They have purple noise now, red noise, brown noise.
I don't well, I know the brown noise, right?
Yeah.
No, yeah, what's the deal with it being like color coded? I don't really understand that.
I don't either. I think they make that shit up.
I think it's
Like
kind of stupid.
there is some tangential relationship between sound and color, obviously, like because they're both vibrations and they're waveforms, and so you can make a system to kind of unify them together. But if you look it up, because I've been very interested in this in the past, um, then there's so many different ways of looking at it that there's no one's actually figured it out. So there's not like an actual real solid science behind it. So I
It
don't
would
know
be
what the
interesting to like.
colors are.
It would be interesting to do like a little test where like we like play a tone and then have a bunch of people say like what color it makes them think of, and then check everyone's results.
Yo, yeah, maybe we do that on a Patreon episode or something.
We just start doing scientific experiments on our
It's
Patreon.
kind of based, dude. That's what Rare Candy's doing, dude. They got the remote viewing RV thing going,
Yep.
and like they'll do that, and it's kind of like, I mean, fuck, dude. if they're not going to do good science, we're going to have to take it in our own hands, brother.
We'll do it at this point. We'll just get an RFK sponsorship. We'll get an endowment from the government.
Dude, if we could be a part of the commission for some reason,
Dude, that would rock, dude. Well, okay, so what do you think of all that?
I mean, I love it, dude. That's what I
Mhm.
voted for. I
That
voted for RFK to get in there and like move some stuff around. And I mean, that's not the only thing I voted for. I also voted for peace in the Middle East and peace in Russia, Ukraine, which is also kind of happening. We can talk about later.
right? Yeah,
But
it's
and I
true.
also voted for the immigration and all the things he's delivering on. But this was one of the biggest things that really swung me over there in the first place was when RFK dropped out and endorsed him. Not that I was waiting for RFK to like get his approval of Trump if he was good or not, but more so that he was immediately incorporated into the campaign and obviously was given some level of a promise that you're going to get a cabinet position. And that's what I was really like on board for in the first place. And the rest of this is just kind of icing on the cake. And so to me, I see it as like Trump coming through on like one of his main campaign promises in the latter half of the campaign that like got a new swath of voters kind of to come over, and this
Yep.
is him actually following through with that. And this is like the patronage network thing where it's like he's actually saying no, I'm going to reward the people that voted for this and came over and support this. Not let he could have just not cared about it and then just let it go through the Senate committee and stuff and then him maybe not be actually approved, but instead he actually like whipped the people the votes together to make it so that he would get appointed because they did everything that they could to try to make it so he wasn't going to get passed and approved.
RFK.
Yeah, they had
Yeah,
like
100%.
they brought Bernie Sanders out to badmouth him. They brought his own fucking cousin out of the woodwork.
Dude, the stuff with his like family is some of the most detestable stuff I can think of. Really,
It's sickening, dude.
it,
And
it is it is pretty sickening, isn't it?
I kind of get it to a small capacity where it's like these people have probably been burnt by him in the past in some way because he was a heroin addict and stuff. So I get maybe there's bad blood and like maybe there's stuff they haven't really overcome. And then obviously there's a huge political dimension to it. Um,
Was he actually like a straight up heroin addict?
yeah, I believe so.
Whoa, that's fucking crazy.
Which is also kind of sick. I mean, it's not that's not good for him, but he's overcome it, and that's like a point of view into the drug crisis and addiction, like entire network that other people don't have.
I love just being like in like a positive way. Like because I can tell by the context that it's positive. Just being like, dude, like RFK was a heroin addict. That's kind of fucking sick, dude.
That's awesome. Yeah,
but I kind of get where you're coming from. Where it's like, dude, he's kind of just clawed his way out of hell. You know.
yeah. He hit his
Um,
bottom and he like came up, and that teaches you a lot about who you are as a person, and
well,
it puts you on a solid foundation.
I think the fellow that he's replacing also hit his bottom, but in a different way, a different
Yeah,
sense of the word.
very much so. Yeah, he was getting his bottom hit.
Yeah. A little bit of wordplay there. Um, I think it's exciting. I mean, I think between him and Tulsi,
Hmm.
uh, he's easier to get excited about, but I think she's probably the bigger deal.
Yeah.
Um, because just the idea that like Tulsi's kind of just like running the deep state a little bit is kind of fucking insane.
Yeah, dude. 101
That's
Dalmatians looking ass.
oh my god, I immediately understood what you meant. Um, and I think that's pretty exciting. I'm kind of shocked that they both got confirmed. To be totally honest with
Me too, man.
you,
I was watching the RFK stuff. Like, I wasn't tuning
oh,
into
go ahead. You
C-SPAN
cut
or
out.
anything, but I was following along with the headlines more than I do with almost
You
any
there?
kind of issue politically at all. And
Hey, buddy.
it was kind of
Ah,
really
shit.
sickening to see, like we said, his family and also like fucking Bernie Sanders, dude. He comes out and is just bitching about like he sold a singlet or like a baby jumper that said like no vax, no problem on some uh, I don't even know foundation that RFK founded's website, and that's like the main thing that Bernie Sanders was bitching about. It's like, dude, he's got nothing to do with that, and also, who gives a fuck? Why does Congress need to hear about that? Oh, Slav's out of here. You gotta tell the wife she did actually fuck up the podcast this time.
Dude, she's ruining my fucking life, dog. My fucking life up here trying to
Fuck.
podcast.
We gotta get that into the soundboard.
Yeah, we probably should, shouldn't we? Well,
Yeah.
okay. Anyways, I almost feel like making up for lost time now by just jumping straight back in. That was a fucking nightmare, though. But anyways, um, yeah, no, I mean Tulsi and RFK is like a pretty big deal. Most of the people that I like share political values with IRL are mostly pretty stoked on RFK.
Yeah.
Because I also think that I think that ties into like lifestyle branding stuff.
Big time.
With the health, and I think that that's like a little bit more quantifiable and easier to kind of wrap your head around as opposed to like the anti-war stuff with Tulsi.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's
I'm
more
also
domestic stuff.
It's more domestic stuff. Though I mean, honestly, like, you know, a more domestically handled, you know, if stuff within her purview was handled with a more like domestic mindset, that would be a tremendous boon to all of us. Um, but yeah, I don't like hang out with a bunch of like anti-war libertarians or anything, so it's not exactly like I was going to hear a ton about Tulsi. But it's fucking exciting, man. I think you sent me that page on the White House website about the Make America Healthy Again stuff. You should kind of summarize some of that stuff here.
Yeah, so they appointed and confirmed RFK. So he's like the head of Health and Human Services, and they within the same day, Trump signed an executive order that was to establish the Make America Healthy Again Commission. And the Make America Healthy Again Commission is like basically just the whole thing that RFK has been talking about for his whole campaign. That's kind of focused around just reshaping our approach to health in the country. And the language, like, it starts off hitting all the kind of the big talking points like childhood disease, chronic illness, mental illness, how we stack up to the rest of the world, and basically starts out kind of like laying the foundation for like, this is what's actually wrong with stuff that's going on in the country to establish that it's like a legitimate crisis, essentially. And then it sets up um, a commission that's going to be RFK is the head of it, and it contains the Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Secretary of Education, Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Administrator of the EPA, Director of Management and Budget, Director of National Economic Council, Commissioner of Food and Drugs, and then two big ones here for me: the Director for the CDC and the Director for the NIH. And essentially, it's like formed to fight childhood chronic disease primarily, reestablish like the gold standard within scientific like testing, and make kind of keeping the experts in check, so to speak. And so
Mhm.
there's a lot in it to kind of chew on, but really the whole thing, like if you just look at the overview, is basically it's just giving RFK kind of oversight over all of these different commissions, not direct oversight, like he has the power to like really change what they're doing, but he can call together the commission to do reviews. He can call them to basically do open hearings and stuff like that, and he has like a kind of a strong influence over those agencies now based on them being under his kind of purview in this commission.
Yeah, I mean this is wild. This is wild. I'm brought back to something that I saw Marek say online, which is basically like, do I know if all this stuff is going to work or not? No, but like, do I want to go back to everyone basically unanimously saying we need someone to come in and do something really big for a change, and then no one else ever does it?
Yeah.
And that's how I feel with this, where it's like, dude, like, how long has it been? I mean, the obesity thing is a really interesting one because
Mm-hmm.
whenever people talk about it, they're talking about it as if it's like this brand new thing in the discourse that no one is talking about at all, and that's because no one's talking about it at all, and because like it's been going on, like we've been hearing about it for like 2 decades,
Yeah.
and at least, and and the only progress that's been made about it is that just the fat acceptance stuff, which has basically kind of made it, you know, not socially
Not a
acceptable
problem.
to talk about.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
and it's actually kind of funny because in the same kind of turn with the whole vibe shift that's happening, one thing I wrote down as a quick side to talk about was
uh,
Lizzo. Lizzo,
oh
one
yeah,
of our
she's losing some
favorites.
weight.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
losing some weight.
She's been like away from like touring or whatever and like kind of just working on herself, like trying to lose weight. And then like I think today or yesterday, she put out some big Instagram post or X or something where she has like a picture of her old fat self on this easel and she like spray paints like "bye bitch" over it and like kicks it or something. And then now she's like she's not skinny by any means, but she's more, you know, more fit and healthier now. So it's funny because it's like that whole wave of like fat acceptance and you can't, you know, make fun of people for their weight and everything like that. It's actually good to dance around and be fat and eat ice cream or whatever that commercial was talking about. Um,
It's going to jump.
but either
Oh yeah,
way,
I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it right now. Well, I mean, I'll be honest. Like, she's looking a lot better. She's looking a lot better.
definitely. I mean, she's got some way to go, but she's working on it. But anyways, like that's my thing. She's even turned. Like, and it's also an admittance that like, yeah, she didn't love being fat as hell. No one loves that. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for anyone to look at. It's not good for their health. It's not good for anything. And so like this is like part of the vibe shift. It's like, oh, she's losing weight. She's publicly making a statement that like I should like I didn't want to be fat. And it's not like she's maybe saying all this out loud, but that's what it means symbolically in a lot of
I
stuff.
mean, of course, it means she didn't want to be fat, dude.
Right.
She's like reveling in the change. So no, I think that counts as this should be like a segment we do is like, does this count as vibe shift?
Yeah. And then
And
bingo, vibe shift.
I think that counts as vibe shift, dude.
Yeah. But I think that's part of it. And so I think that like it's very interesting that we have now this MAHA commission that's like actually being established on the books. Like people are, even if nothing's really done, even if it's like he gets neutered and his ability to really affect the change he wants to, we're fucking talking about it now and it's on the books that there's at least a stated intention to try to combat some of this stuff. Whereas before it was just like you said, accept it, like it, you should make it cool or whatever and normalize it or just ignore it completely. And so I think it's definitely a positive step to at least point out the issue at hand and try to lay down a framework for working on it.
Well, which again, like Lizzo kind of like was like the representative of that whole psyop,
Oh
right? So
yeah.
it's like kind of interesting to see her flip a little bit. The one thing I will say, because I've been getting a little I've been getting a little uneasy again now with just the positivity. And
Mm,
and so, you know, the Gaza stuff,
yeah.
right? Now, I might be a little bit behind here, but basically I'll just intro the situation as I understand it so far. But we're going to come in there, we're going to relocate all these guys. Gaza's basically going to be under American control. We're going to rebuild it.
Yeah.
And like Jordan and Saudi Arabia are going to take all these Arabs,
They're just
right?
gonna have to or whatever. Yeah.
Um I don't like that.
No, of course not.
I don't like that at all, right? I don't like Zionism, right?
No.
Um now,
Netanyahu loves it.
yeah, well, I bet it's not his first choice,
Well,
but
yeah.
I'm sure he loves it more than, the fucking Muslims that are getting kicked out. Um Now, but the thing is, right, is it's hard for me to, I don't know where in the process we are right now, but in the context of like, what happened with the tariffs and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
I do think that it's wise to maybe not rush to judgment with this,
Yeah.
because it could just be like a framing device that he's using, and it could be just kind of like calling, like it could be a bluff,
Yes.
um, and I know that like very much in the case of the tariffs, um, coming off as like a brash, idiotic asshole who's going to be really destructive was like kind of part of the whole strategy.
Yeah.
Um, and so I don't want to be in a rush to like fall for the bait, right? Um, but like everybody's kind of playing along and talking as if this is the plan. So if it is cover, it's like deep cover.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't love it. I don't love it. And it does make me, it does kind of make me wonder, it does kind of make me
Mhm.
wonder. Now, that being said, I might just be a little bit of like, I might be a little vapid here with just my kind of need to have something critical to say.
I mean,
But
it's
like,
a big
it does kind
thing.
of a, well, it is a big, it's a fucking huge thing. And it also will just kind of create the same kind of problem that
Mm.
happened in the
Yeah.
past.
Except now we're
Um,
more deeply involved directly with it, which is not ideal either. And then it's a reason to have more troops stationed over there. I mean, yeah, I don't like it. I don't like that. I don't really like a lot of the stuff that's like, we're going to go take back the Panama Canal and stuff. I definitely understand the rationale for all of it. And I can devil's advocate it. And if it happens, it's like, I don't love it and I don't want to be a part of it, but it's also kind of, I see why it's happening. And is it maybe like, pragmatically maybe the best thing to do right now, given the fact that like realistically no one's just gonna let the Palestinians own and redevelop Gaza on their own. That's just not gonna happen. I wish it would. Like I wish that we would say like, hey, I wish like us together with like the UN would be like, we're done with like supporting Israel, but at the same time like y'all have to like maintain some level of peace, and if y'all don't, then we're gonna like eliminate both of you. I'd like that, but we're not going to ever do that. And so, and I also don't even think I would like that. So I don't really know what to do here. I would like to see self-determinationism. I would like to see the Palestinians be able to run their country like they want to, and a two-state solution that doesn't involve us overreaching and anything like that. But in a real, like realistic sense, is that something that will happen or that ever could happen? I don't really know. And so is the alternative to just let it continue the way that it is and let Israel continue bombing them until they fully occupy it? Or is the alternative maybe we go in there and we occupy it? And I don't know. I don't know what's better, really. I don't really want to be involved either way, but we deeply are involved with it. So I don't know how you kind of undo the knot that's already been tied.
well, it is a good point, because it is like, I mean, is it just going to stop the killing?
Yeah. And
It
if it does,
probably.
then I'm for it, kind of.
Yeah, well, kind of, right?
Right.
Because
Yeah, yeah.
is this just going to create a worse situation? Is this just going to create a worse situation where now, uh, like, if anything happens there, then it'll be like directed at like an American soldier, and it'll
Yes.
cause like an even bigger international event, and
Right. That's what it
you
looks like. I
know,
mean, that's what will for sure happen, I think, if we go over
yeah,
there. Because we will station over there. If we kind of own and control it, we'll have to. And then there's no doubt they're going to do something. Dude, they don't want us over there. And I get it. We shouldn't be over there. But we are. And so that's kind of my thing. I would like to see us go complete like isolationist in a lot of ways and take everyone out of the Middle Eastern affairs. I'd like to see us like broker peace with Russia and Ukraine and get out of there and be like, listen, if the UN and Europe wants to handle this bullshit, continue this like seedy kind of shit, they can, but we're out of it. I'd like to see that. But I don't know if that's something that's realistic at a geopolitical point of view, because I'm not really actually, I'm just saying what I want to see as a citizen. I want to see us focus on us. But I don't really know how that looks like at a like global level, if that actually is, if we do pull out all this stuff, you know.
right. On on a more positive kind of like international level, I do think that what's going on in Ukraine is really encouraging.
I love it.
Um, yeah, I mean, we're pretty much just wrapping it up.
Mm-hmm. And everyone's
And
like bitching about it. France and the Europeans are like, "Oh no, no! Like, you have to keep supporting them." And you're getting all these like retarded posts from like Occupy Democrats or whatever that are like, "We can't abandon our Ukraine brothers and sisters." It's like, dude, you want to sign them up for more death and destruction, or do you want to just like, let's go work it out with the Saudi Arabians and figure something out? That's
right,
what I feel like. Because to me,
yeah,
that's to me, it's a positive. Like I voted for them to cut that shit out in Ukraine, and if that means we pull out funding and then Ukraine still dukes it out or whatever with the UN, they can, or if it means that we broker peace, that's much better. Um, but like you gotta know, at any time there's these international deals being done, it's like it's not real lasting peace or anything like that. So like if we do broker some peace deal with the Russian Ukraine, there's always going to be these people who are going to continue to try to push for more like color revolution bullshit in Ukraine to restart aggressions and reestablish and jockey for position with this like weird leftover containment kind of. policy from Cold War era, where people are like, we still gotta flank Russia on all sides and like really assert military dominance over there and stuff. I don't
Yep.
agree with that. I don't want Ukraine in the UN. I don't want all that different stuff. But I really want more than anything to just be not involved with any of it.
Well, and so speaking of leftover Cold War bullshit and everything. And I'm kind of jumping around a little bit here, but there is something really hilarious, and it's just same old shit with leftists now, I guess. But there is something really hilarious about watching leftists get mad about seeing like U.S. foreign aid dry up.
Yeah.
Um, like given just the insane legacy and
Mm-hmm.
reputation that U.S. foreign aid has.
It's never been
Um,
good.
it's like never been good. Um, but I mean, the USAID stuff is fucking wild, dude. It's super wild. At the same time, I find it thoroughly unsurprising. Like it's kind of just one of these things. Where it's like, all right, this whole like Hydra, this whole network clearly had, uh, the blood was pumping from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I don't even think that the USAID represents like even the majority of the blood in the system, because like the
Oh
numbers
no.
they've published aren't even really that like crazy.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, they're like published as if they're crazy, but they in the grand scheme it doesn't really shock me all that much.
Yeah.
Um, but
It's just
uh,
like a
but
money laundering kind of front for a bunch of like back end kind of like black ops type operations and like money schemes that are off the books, and then they run some of it through there because they have to have some legitimation like reasons for being over in certain areas. And so they'll
yep,
be like, oh, we're doing aid in fucking the Sudan. You're like, what, why are we in the Sudan? Oh, it's just foreign aid. And then you find, oh, we're actually like backing military coups and this kind of thing. That's just like that's what it is. And it the reason it kind of exists is to run cover, I think, for a lot of this other stuff that's going on like under the table. So I don't think it accounts for any real significant portion of like the runaway spending that's happened and like the over control of like military industrial complex interests. um but I do think that it's like a symbolic move, and it's like we're trying to like we know that this is the face of the organization kind of that we're given, so let's go ahead and chop it off and then try to see what else we can get to. That's what I think is going on with the USAID, because like the real money that's being spent in shady places around the world to do all this different stuff or go
mm-hmm.
against our own political operatives and stuff, all of that is it's like you're not going to touch that really from cutting away some organization that we know about. It's all going to be kind of behind the scenes stuff. And so to me, the USAID is like, here's like a target that you can go after that people know about. It's easy. Go ahead and take it
Yes,
out.
yes, yes. Well, it's like it's a way of translating, um, like how to understand modern, I guess, like American neo-colonial politics,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like, um, if you actually want to wind things down in Ukraine and like shift public opinion meaningfully so that people maybe understand what the fuck was wrong in the first place, you know, um, taking a shot at foreign aid probably like is pretty effective. Just with color revolution and
Hmm.
all these things like that. Excuse me. And like I said, there is something really satisfying about what, or not even satisfying. Like I don't want to say satisfying, but there's something ironic about watching leftists defend U.S. foreign aid as if it hasn't been used against them for fucking decades.
Yeah. I mean, as if
I
it's not been the main face of, like you said, American neocolonialism, American neo imperialism, like whatever kind of modern face of our overreach around the world and our meddling in foreign affairs, it's always done under the guise of aid. And so,
Yeah,
like, it's it's wild to people that don't take that additional step. It's just, I don't know, it just illustrates the whole thing where it's like, yeah, the left is just fully incompetent to even understand its old systems of analysis that it's meant to be built around.
well, and also just like it makes me like appreciate, um the whole like, guys, this stuff, the whole argument you could make of like, guys, this stuff has been used to like fund neo-Nazis and like, anti-communist action and stuff like that.
Hmm.
That doesn't work anymore because that band-aid, they got the vaccine against that talking point with Ukraine already,
Oh yeah. Hmm.
right? So I don't know. I mean, it's just like a game of whack-a-mole where it's
Hmm.
just constantly trying to like move on to the next hole that needs to be plugged up, as
Yeah.
opposed to like having any kind of consistent position on really much of anything.
Hmm.
I mean, not to just bitch about leftists the whole time or whatever, but like,
No, of course not. But it is
because
something
go ahead, sorry.
that is something that illustrates like the entire mode of their thought right now, or lack thereof. Is that it's just like, yeah, they go from supporting wars to now bitching about the cutting off of like foreign aid and stuff like that. It's like y'all have lost your footing entirely. Um,
Yeah, well, and so this is like, honestly, this is like, maybe this has me thinking about something else, which is maybe an even bigger point, which is I need to start adjusting to this new gear shift, which is, it's always easy to rest on my laurels and just like, and just bitch about leftists,
yeah.
because there's a rich tradition of this. There's a rich tradition of this both among right wingers and left wingers.
Hmm.
Um, but like in reality, like again, we've talked about it a few times now. Like they're like done.
Oh
Like
yeah.
they like almost for all intents and purposes like don't even exist anymore.
Hmm.
And so they've totally collapsed. They're like not even really worth mentioning anymore. I
Yeah.
mean, unless
Yeah.
something really seriously changes, like they're not worth mentioning anymore.
It's hard to see
Um,
what change could facilitate them having an enough of a realistic power to like to bitch about right now.
I have absolutely no idea. I mean, it would have to be some kind of kabbalistic,
Yeah.
backroom deal kind of thing. Um, but so now, I mean, I think like just this gear shift of being of like kind of adjusting and being like, I think most of the actual conversation is like within the right, about
Hmm.
the right, and we can like laugh about. I mean, I don't want to say it's impotent, like what everything the left is doing, like deportations have like really, they've like stood in the way of deportations big time. Like
Hmm.
we aren't seeing high numbers of deportations. Um, this is just totally vibes based, but I don't really think that's going to last very long. I think that again, I don't think that Trump runs on this issue, with this campaign promise without having some idea of what roadblocks are going to be put in front of them
Yeah.
and how to counter those. But at least for now, like there is some, you know, interference there. Um, but like not really with anything else as far as I'm concerned. And like even in the culture, it's just they're just kind of whining, they're just kind of
Hmm.
whining about everything. So there's not really much of a discussion there anymore. I think like it will kind of, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll get called like a black pillar or something. But like, I think the more interesting conversation is going to be basically just like putting people like Musk under a microscope
Mm.
and just making sure that he's not like getting off the leash,
Yeah.
And I still do think he's basically the biggest risk.
Oh yeah,
Um,
obviously, dude. The photo shoot in like the conference that they did in the Oval Office, where it's like he's just in the corner and Trump is sitting down at the desk. It's like and Elon standing over him. Basically, that's like not good optics. That's not. I hate that. That's not something
yeah,
I like at all. And so like I have problems with stuff that's going on. I understand it at the same time. It's like there he's kind of using him as like a wrecking ball to kind of tear apart a lot of this stuff. Like that's what the DOGE kind of thing is. And when you have like a wide ranging wrecking ball, it's gonna knock some shit out of line that like you maybe didn't intend to, or maybe it's not best to. But it's like kind of you got to take down the whole structure to kind of try to build some stuff up again. So it's like, yeah, I don't love him letting Elon really have this kind of influence and control in any capacity. And they worry a lot about how much of it like is actually going to be like Trump is using him and how much is it really that Elon's kind of like getting to do a little bit of what he wants. Um, and
I
that's
mean,
kind of,
there's a pretty binary point coming up here soon where it is like it needs to be Trump just like kind of using him for what he's useful for and then cutting him loose
Yeah.
because we already know we got such a huge reminder that like his material interests just aren't aligned with ours with the
Mm-hmm.
H1B discourse. And but again, this is the thing that's like making me, it's starting to make me a little bit uneasy because it feels like this like, okay, all right. So Trump did a blitz the first month or so,
Yeah.
right? It's just this flurry of stuff, right? Um, and people are talking about the obvious aspect of that, which is, he did it so that the opposition can't even keep up,
Mm-hmm.
right? The opposition can't even keep up, and like no one can even piece together a fucking shitty op-ed article about any of this stuff because it's all happening so rapidly. And like
Yeah.
that's a good strategy, right? But I think that like a similar point applies to the right, which is it's like it's the whole everyone talking about like are we tired of winning yet thing, right? And it's like everybody's kind of bloated and have these like full stomachs
Yeah.
of all of these kind of wins, um and maybe like becoming a little bit complacent.
Mm.
And more than anything, I just see like at least among like discourse online, and take it with a grain of salt because mileage varies on how meaningful that kind of stuff is, but like people just kind of like really quickly jumping into this space of just disciplining anyone who has anything critical to say at all, because it's like, well, what is going to make you happy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like, look, like I get that, and I don't really like being like a pedant, and I don't really like always being pessimistic either. But at the same time, like everyone has a part to play, and
Definitely.
you always want somebody sitting there kind of like poking holes
Mm-hmm.
in your analysis and the plan.
That's good. Good science or good like just knowledge gathering and stuff is when you have other people who are peer reviewing or who are offering kind of pushback. It forces you to steel man your own positions and like re-examine them yourselves. And that's like why the
Yeah,
experts or whatever have been so full of shit the past decade or so or more, because that's just not been a part of like how they're doing things over there. And so we have to, as people who are concerned about that, it's like you got to be consistent and want that within your own party and within your own mechanisms as well. And you have to be able to be willing to turn the microscope onto yourself so that you can criticize and like actually get closer to the things that you want. Because if it's like all kind of a tug of war thing where it's like there's certain areas that are being pulled in different directions, it's like you kind of want to exert your force and pull in your direction as much as possible to kind of warp the overall shape in whatever way it can.
yeah, yeah. Well, exactly, and I think that it's really easy to, especially like in like the early days right now, like a lot of things are being shoveled around, a lot of things are moving. I think it's like a little frighteningly easy for someone like Musk to kind of shape and steer things in a direction that'll have lasting impacts against our interests,
Oh yeah,
under this guise of just like, well, like no one's allowed to fucking say anything, right?
yeah.
You don't want to be a fucking black pillar, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to just let this guy do this, and it's like, dude, like I think just everyone needs. I think everyone just needs to keep in mind that like unless you're a fucking low IQ normie, um, none of us like this guy. Like
Yeah,
none of us
yeah.
actually like no, but like really, like like it's cringe to overly hate on him, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like we're not obsessive about him the way that like libtards are, but like he's not cool.
Oh, I hate him.
He's not good. No, exactly, right? Like, and I
He's a
think you and I,
deadbeat dad to a bunch of kids and doesn't care for them except to use them for photo ops and shit. He's like a piece of human garbage, no doubt.
no, he's awful, and that's kind of the thing is that it's just like guys, just like kind of he's the equivalent of like um of like the guy who you let hang out because he has a lot of money and can like buy a half ounce,
Yeah,
and then you kind of just like hang out and smoke with him, and then once it's gone, you kind of just leave,
yeah, yeah. You're like,
right?
oh, we're all going home separately, dude. We're just all calling it for the night, and then you go out. You're like, all right, where we going, dude?
Yeah, dude. Now that that guy's gone,
Yeah,
um, and like it just he needs to be that needs to be locked in, And
yeah,
I think that a lot of the frustration with Vivek ended up being it's like Vivek was the scapegoat for the whole thing,
Majorly,
right?
dude.
And then we all just kind of memory hold
Elon.
Musk's part in it.
Uh-huh.
And I don't like that. I
No.
don't like that. I don't like that at all. Um, and so I don't know. Like he, I mean, it's not gonna happen. But like end of the year, him just no longer being involved at all would be
That'd be
kind of the
everything.
ideal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be everything.
I kind of have a couple lines of thought on it. I'll start off kind of commenting on what you were saying about like when you have all this stuff that's in the shuffle, stuff can go kind of missing or kind of in the cover of all that. You can exert a little bit more force and maybe get things done that you might not would have been able to. And so I think that's always kind of been part of the allure of people who are not necessarily in the Trump camp full on, but getting involved with it. It's because they see that through this kind of heterodox, kind of syncretic amalgamation of things, it's kind of, it's kind of chaotic in a sense, like Trump's like kind of whole thing. And because of that, there's inroads to maybe be able to get in there in the chaos, and you can maybe kind of get some of the things done that you want. And like that's what I found.
Wait,
That's what
repeat that part. Sorry.
I think that the function of people who are getting involved with the Trump camp, who are not full on like diehard MAGA people, they see that within the chaos of the Trump camp and the way it operates, kind of, there's an
Mhm.
ability to exert more influence than you would be able to in something like the DNC or whatever. And
Yep.
so, because of that, it's enticing. And that's why I was actually interested in it in a way. In the first place, it's like, oh, there's more malleability over here on the right and within this movement specifically because it's kind of syncretic. And so, because of that, differing parties are kind of going over there in order to try to further their interests more and more because there's more room for it there. And that's what's been good about them. That's why it's like someone like RFK is able to kind of get in there and do some things that he wouldn't have, if he was in the cabinet of the Democratic elite or whatever. And it's kind of like you have someone like JD Vance is kind of able to shoehorn kind of some of these more um, alternative kind of maybe approaches to like a traditional Republican kind of view. And so you're able to kind of get some of these heterodox things going. But it also opens the door for someone like Elon, who's well situated because he has fucking unlimited money and influence and stuff to really get in there and work on the mechanisms himself. And like ideally, you wanted to cut that out. Ideally there would never have been a Doge. Like that's fucked. That's crazy. It's named
Yeah.
after a fucking shit. I mean, all of it. It sucks. It's terrible. It's named after a blockchain shitcoin that he pumped and dumped. It's like the whole thing is crazy, and I don't like it. But it is kind of part and parcel of the whole thing that is the Trump movement. It's that like you can get your interests kind of um, advanced within that camp in an easier way. And so that's what's happening with Elon. And I don't like it, but I think he was like a strategic partner for a long time, and even still now, I guess. But I would like to see a delineation. But I think that that's kind of coming. I think baked into this kind of unholy matrimony of Trump and Elon is basically the fact that, like you said, no one likes Elon. None of the MAGA voter base, their values do not align with Elon Musk, and his
Mhm.
values and his vision of the future doesn't align with the vision of the future of most people that voted for Trump. And I don't think that most people voted for Trump because they were like, yeah, let's get Elon in the mechanisms of the government. Like, I don't think that was ever really a part of it. And so I think there's kind of a built in contradiction within that that I think is inevitably going to come to a head. And I don't know which way it cracks and which way it breaks. But one thing I could see is that like if you look at this in a huge like big arc of like the broad strokes of history and you think about at capital and you think about intelligence as like its own kind of force, I
Mhm.
think that like I think we're moving towards kind of a technocracy kind of cyberpunk future type of thing in the down the road. And I think there's like a hyperstition kind of thing that's occurring pulling us towards that. And I think that in a large sense this is part of that. Like I think that this Elon wedding with Trump is going to break down eventually, and it's going to lead to like some people who are like really devoted Musk and technocratic kind of techno elite people who maybe weren't in the first place, and it's going to maybe establish possibly like if there is a rift that breaks, which I hope, and I hope that Trump is not really going to be tied to him at the hip for so long, then it might create a new kind of political ground that's like these tech billionaires are really going to do their own kind of thing and like really start like tech bro kind of party, not party, but like you'll start seeing more like let's just let a tech guy run the fucking country, and that might become like a literal political persuasion people hold, maybe not super
Yeah.
strong, but that might open the door towards like AI government down the road. I think that's kind of like if you're looking at it as like a functional mechanism, I think that's what's happening as far as historical development goes.
It would be like, as we're saying this, I am kind of starting to see that like it might kind of be the only good way of working this out is for like Trump to just have like a historic betrayal of Elon.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that will happen, but it is kind of nice that like Tesla is so reliant on like government subsidies.
Mm-hmm. He
Um
could. He could fuck
that
him.
like yeah, that he could just totally fuck him. Um
Or lean on him and say, listen, dude, we will fuck you if you don't kind of fall in line in some capacity.
like the tariffs.
Yes, yes.
Um, this is where we start to get into the territory of like getting a little nervous about the teal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's always it's the whole thing of like there's like the scientist STEM people, and then there's like the philosopher. Like, how do I want to say this? Okay, like as much as we make fun of the humanities,
Mm-hmm.
being like a leader, being like a world leader is more of an art form than it is a science. And like we're
Yeah.
kind of fighting against people that think it's a science,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what you need to do, and this is how I've been under the impression that this is kind of what we've been watching. You need to like bring the fucking science tards to heel
Yeah.
and be like, you're gonna kiss the fucking ring because like you guys are like a great resource, but you're like horrible leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to like scientists as leaders is like how you get genocides,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And how you like snuff out the human spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, we like have this little parade of them kissing the ring. Zuckerberg comes on Rogan and all this stuff. But like, again, like, I don't know. That's what needs to actually happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the stuff with Musk makes me worried that won't happen. But it is interesting to think that like perhaps we do have a lot of leverage over him with
Mm-hmm.
just how reliant he is on like these kind of post 2008 kind of neoliberal policies that
Yeah.
make him kind of like a welfare recipient.
Majorly. Well, I mean, I also saw recently like the state signed some sort of contract to buy a bunch of fucking like armored cyber trucks and stuff from Tesla and like start
Ha.
using Tesla as part of their fleets and stuff like that. I mean, it's not good. I don't know. That's not good. I don't like that. Like that's closer to like tech fascism kind of thing than I would like to be in a
I mean,
really
he was
serious
already an
way.
arms dealer, so that's not that surprising
Well,
to me.
no,
But
yeah, and it's not necessary. Like, and this is things are already happening behind the scenes. Like, if the Democrats were in charge, and if they looked like they were going to be winning down the line, like he would have continued to be in that camp, and then he would still be getting the grants and stuff either way. But he wouldn't be
Mhm.
like actually a figurehead within the political administration. So like, I think it's like both good and bad. It's bad because it's like you don't want this guy actually having this kind of control and power in any way. But then at the same time, he already did, and this is kind of like making it in the open, and it's gonna like illustrate in a meaningful sense the control and influence that billionaires and industry people within the country have on the government, anyways. Um, so I think that's maybe like a positive way to look at it. Is like it's gonna bring some of this stuff to light in a really visceral sense, and that's going to be bad at first, and it could lead to bad consequences, but it could also lead to like people getting together and being like, we've really got to sever the corporate state from what we're doing.
so
And
so here's my total LARP like fantasy world idea
yeah.
is Trump brings Musk in and he's like, hey, you're gonna be the public face of like being a hatchet man and ripping stuff out,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're gonna take a big hit in your public persona. and then like once that reaches a fever pitch, I'm just gonna stab you in the fucking back
Yeah.
and just cut you loose, and you get to be the fall guy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's the way the whole thing works out.
Yeah. And then
Um,
ideally you rebuild some of these things because now that you've had the structure torn down, it's like we got a foundation to work with, and let's kind of rebuild up some stuff.
mhm. I think if Trump pulled like a Jack Ma on Tesla, um, that would in my mind that would be the like, are you tired of winning yet moment,
Yeah, I mean, dude, that would be sick. That's probably best case scenario given what we're looking at. Um, and I'm not sure that'll happen, but that is what I would hold out hope for. I think the realistic scenario is that it's heading to some sort of head in general, anyways, and then who knows how it goes. I hope it plays out that way, where Trump stabs him in the back, kind of kicks him to the dogs. People eat him up because people hate billionaires and stuff, anyways, and that's kind of just a good thing. Get him out of here, and maybe he still does like he still gets some government funding or whatever, but like it just he's no longer kind of in control, and then Trump gets to kind of dodge the optics of being the one that's tearing all this stuff down, and then he gets to
hmm
step in and say, "Hey, me and like JD Vance are going to like establish a committee to like reappoint some new kind of versions of some of the stuff that we might find are actually effective, like some of the aid that's going to US farmers. Now they want to restart the farm aid bill, so it's like now he can come in and kind of reestablish things that are like actually maybe positive for domestic American citizens and not tied to this patronage network that he's trying to break apart. That would be great if he could do that. And that's what I think. I think there's like a reality in which that is what's happening. I'm not positive that that's the one we're in, but I do think there's a chance of that.
Well, I think the more I think an interesting question is just like, do we get to the end of this 4-year administration and Trump and Elon still have the same positive relationship?
Yeah.
Because a lot has happened in the last 4 years with Elon Musk,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and so I mean, where does he arrive in 4 years from now?
Yeah.
I don't know. Um, it like actually, when looked in like kind of the grand scale, it does actually kind of make sense that there would maybe be like a
Mm-hmm.
souring effect in the relationship, but I just don't know the intricacies of the relationship well enough
Yeah.
to really speak on that.
It seems like it has to be, to me, like just given everything that I know and my general political instincts, which is not much, but it seems that I would think it's heading to some sort of breaking point, because, like I said, they don't represent the same values, except for like business in some capacity, which I guess is like at
hmm
the end of the day, that's the overarching kind of thing that it all is feeding into. It's like capital, but I do think that there's serious departures between Elon Musk ideology and the ideology of all of Trump's patronage network, pretty much. And I think that this is like a breaking point where it'll get to a point where he has to decide either fuck my reputation in order to maintain this thing with Elon, or he has to decide fuck Elon in order to maintain my relationship with my patronage network and my supporters and kind of what my legacy generally is. And I hope that he errs on a side of his supporters, which it seems like he's been doing. If you look at the RFK stuff and everything, so I think there's hope to think that that will happen. But it may be naive a little bit because it's also like you got to look at the mechanisms of how our economy works and how our politics work, anyways, and they do go hand in hand with like the industrial giants of the nation. So this is like, you know, it's a tale as old as time, but now it's just more visceral because he's actually inside of the Oval Office.
Right. Right.
So I think it has
Yeah.
to come
I
to
don't
a
know.
head, but I don't know who wins that. And I hope that it's Trump, and I'm going to keep like talking about it and hope so that that's what everyone else that supported him thinks and never changes, and then that way there's more pressure on him to not capitulate.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. It's interesting. One aspect of this that I feel is kind of telling is just, I wonder how much of this, like as like online dissident schizos that we kind of pay attention to, and I guess maybe are
Yeah,
like
definitely.
maybe we're all kind of. I just wonder how much of all of this has been. And again, like we're being very pessimistic right now, and I don't necessarily want that to give the impression that like we're pessimists about this whole thing ultimately. But I wonder how much of all of this stuff and how we're all seeing it and experiencing and processing it is us kind of like seeing and getting what we want to out of it as opposed
Yeah.
to what's actually happening. And a really good example is the Department of Government Efficiency, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't really give a fuck about government efficiency,
No.
right? In fact, I like think that that's like some neoliberal fucking mind virus shit,
Yes.
right? I'm not saying I want a government that's inefficient, but I have fucking grown up in this fucking culture to understand what people are talking about when they say like, "Oh, I want the government to be more efficient 90% of the time,"
Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so really the Department of Government Efficiency for me is more like the department of destroying the opponent's patronage networks,
Yeah.
right?
Big time.
And that rocks and that's good. But like, is that how they're looking at it?
Right.
Is
Right.
that like I know that that's not how like my boomer conservative mom is looking at it, but that's okay because like that doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
But like, is that how they're looking at it, or is it actually like are they actually you know just boomer minded?
Right.
I don't really know. I like hope that's not the case.
I think there's a little bit of both.
I think you're probably right. I think you're probably right.
Like if you look at the Project 2025 stuff, right, which was a big talking point before the election, you look into that, and I'm not trying to like say that that's exactly what's going on or anything, or even draw any parallels to what's really happening now. But if you look
Uh-huh.
into that, if you did take that as an honest representation of what they wanted to do, it was just a bunch of regular kind of neocon fucking regular Republican talking points like government efficiency, austerity kind of bullshit, and then a couple of cultural differences. And so like I think that there is a strong force within the camp that is like traditional kind of small government, let's cut government spending, austerity, like neoliberal kind of approach to government. And I think that's like a big part of the people who are like just regular politicians that are within the camp. So like there is a level of his network that does want that. And so I think there's some of that happening, but at the same time if you look at it from like a political function, then yes, you could see that even if that's not what their intention is, it is destroying this other patronage network. So it's like how much does intentionality matter? And how much is it like just this is what's functionally occurring? I would like for them to be looking at it in this base way, where they're like, yeah, dude, we're just going to take apart this patronage network. It's not about austerity. Austerity is actually gay. I think that would be sweet. But I think it's more like it's playing a little bit of both sides of the room.
Yep. Yep. I guess the thing that I worry about, finishing my coffee there, is just which side does that favor? And when the chips are down, which side wins out?
Yeah.
Right? Because I do think that like plain Jane fucking normie con. Well, it's just actually about reducing waste and everything. That is the Elon side, right?
Big time.
And like the more like Machiavellian, um, illiberal side of it, because that's the whole thing. Is it's like I personally do think that like regardless of like immediate methods and how people talk about him, like Elon's like is sitting in a classically liberal space,
Yeah.
and like that's not what I fucking want.
Yeah. He
Um,
tries to cosplay like he's not by doing Nazi salutes and shit like that on the fucking inauguration stage, but he is fundamentally, yes.
yeah, he's just a fucking libtard, and like, um, and I do want like the weird theory cells to be like making moves instead of just like fucking retard tech guy who's posting Milton Friedman clips online.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
dumb. That's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Um,
He's just such
so
a dweeb, dude. Jesus, man. It's like
well,
it's
he is such a
crazy.
dweeb, and it is one of those things where it's like I don't know, like I don't know that him and because the tech thing is interesting. I don't know that him and Peter Thiel are like actually on the same side. Um, because like I don't necessarily like Peter Thiel. but like I see him actually being interested in like different illiberal forms of thought and outwardly talking about it in a way that I like don't observe with Musk really at all.
I don't think he's
Um,
smart enough to. Like, I don't think Elon is
no,
like actually very intelligent as far as anything like that goes.
I think that he has really specific intelligence for the
Yeah.
things he works on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so again, at the end of the day, it's just like having Musk take over would be like a would be like the radical centrist ending of the story.
Yeah.
And that's like one of the worst ways it could possibly go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's like also not meaningfully different than just like the Obama coalition continuing to reign.
Yes. That's kind of
Um,
my whole point with the Elon thing is that like I think that like if it continues to go this way, it's not really far different from what he would be kind of going on as far as like the actual playbook of some of these other administrations. And so like I think that's a way to play down the fears from a lot of people that are like, oh my god. Um, but also at the same time, it's disappointing for me as someone who like supported Trump for more illiberal reasons, you know, and more kind of
100%.
syncretic.
100%. 100%. Um, yeah, I don't know. The guy became right wing like 5 seconds ago.
And I
So
guess I
I
kind of did too, even though I still don't claim it. But it's like not in the same way and not for the same reasons, you know?
well, we're not like leading the American right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Is the thing, you know what I mean? And that's the other thing is it's just like I don't understand how this guy psyoped people so fucking hard. Um, especially after everyone forgot about the H1B thing. I
It's
like I don't
crazy to me.
understand. Everyone forgot about it unless they're looking at Vivek.
Vivek, and they hate it. Well, I mean, I don't know that this is a thing, and this is maybe just my lib brain talking, but there is like a big part that's like Vivek was Indian, and they were talking about basically bringing Indians over here, and so you're like you can easily identify him with that in a visceral kind of like way that it's harder to with Elon, and so it's way easier to kind of paint him out as like the scapegoat and make him just take the full brunt of it. Because you're like, yeah, he's Indian. He's trying to bring all these Indians over here. What the fuck?
Yeah, I mean it's just the racist angle of
Yeah.
it, which I guess I mean it works.
Hmm.
But again, like Elon's a fucking foreigner.
Yeah.
It still applies to him.
And he's weird.
Uh,
And he's a tech
yeah,
billionaire.
he's a fucking tech billionaire. But anyways, I mean, yeah, I think it's pretty clear that we are not fans of Elon in this
No.
in this way. And again, I see him as kind of just the main fly in the ointment.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, there's like this whole tech optimist kind of thing that's happening, part and parcel with the rest of the Trump organized, like the rest of the Trump
yeah,
playbook is also this is happening on the side, and I don't like it. Like he's like they're, and I guess it's kind of practical. Like the this thing with OpenAI, and he was going to give like OpenAI and Sam Altman like this huge fucking $500 billion investment or something crazy like that. Because he's like, I get that like right now we're on a verge of things that are like tech and AI is a meaningful force within our lives, and it's going to become more and more so as we go. But like to me, I view it as very central to like the entire thing that's wrong. And so for me, I don't like having tech optimists within the camp when there's also people who are like, we need to focus on like increasing quality of life for like American rural families. It's like, okay, well, that's not going to happen if we're like leaning into AI tech world. And maybe you just kind of like this is maybe the same thing with the geopolitics earlier, where maybe my view of it is just kind of rose colored lens where I'm like, I'd like for us to divest in some capacity, whereas we're kind of heading headlong into that at a global arena, and China's not going to divest from it, so we kind of can't either. Um, but I don't like that. Like that's my thing. Like we're like at a race to like make sure that we're in control of the new technology and new AI, even if it's not positive. But it's like we're gonna be the best at it. It's like yeah, but is this actually good for any of us or not? And then it's like, well, I don't know, but China's gonna be really good at it if we're not, so we have to. And I get that, but I really don't like it, and I don't like this marriage with the tech optimist people.
yeah, I don't know. This is an interesting one because I think this might be kind of a fun one for us to kind of like to have a little bit of a wedge between us, just to like have a little friction. Because I've been using ChatGPT a
No,
lot lately. Oh, dude, I use
no.
it so much now. I use it so motherfucking much, and I use it for my job. I use it for. It's basically now. It's basically replaced Google for me
Mm-hmm.
as far as like basic inquiries go.
Yeah.
And the thing I've basically found is that with Google, you need to basically massage your wording of a question,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, like, you wouldn't ask a person a question the same way you ask Google.
Yeah.
Um, and we already know like how how you structure a question to Google. Um, with AI, or really these part of my point I'm going to be building to is that I just don't consider it AI. I think it's dumb marketing
Yeah.
to call it AI.
It's
But
like an
um,
information aggregator.
yeah, these language learning models
Yeah.
are um, these plagiarism machines. Um, you can just ask them questions without, you can cut that whole step of the process out, and literally like I'll even just hit the microphone button and just voice to text, like just stream of consciousness in the laziest way possible, just ask it what is the what, and it gives me an answer. The the thing that you do need to do to account for it, though, with these models, is that since they start this kind of Ouroboros process of referencing themselves,
Yeah. Yeah.
they'll just confidently say wrong shit to you.
100%. Yeah, I find that
Um,
on the AI overview a lot on Google. I've never done Chat GPT. Like I've never interfaced with it in any capacity. The only way I have interfaced with AI is in Google, where if I Google, it
yep.
pops up to preview right away.
And Google does it quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
Google's, and that's the thing is it. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I think a certain amount of it is just like there's a lot of content that's not being that's being created by the AI, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's starting to fold in on itself and reference itself,
Yeah.
and that's funny, and I think that is causing an accelerating effect of just this
Yes.
postmodern truth regime we're in, where like
Mm.
we're in a hall of mirrors, and I think that's kind of funny, but it's just a different skill set you find. That being said, you get a sense of like what's real and what's bullshit, and then you basically just fact check it if it's
Yeah.
something really specific. But like I'm playing through fucking Final Fantasy VII right now on video game, and I like random questions. It's like it is faster for me to just like hit up Chat GPT and be like, you know, how do I beat this boss? And
Oh,
it'll like
sure.
give me it'll give me a way better formatted and easy and quick answer than like Googling it and then needing to sort through all of these forums,
Yeah. Yeah.
which also are also subject to like incorrect information,
Oh, of course.
you know?
Well, that's what the AI
Um,
is pulling from. It's just like pulling from all the aggregate information that's out there on this given topic, and it's running through it instantaneously and then compiling what it finds. And it doesn't mean it's going to get all the right information. It's like,
yes.
yeah,
Well, and so this gets back to like I it's just taking information and reorganizing it into a new form,
mm-hmm,
right? It's just shuffling things around. It's just shuffling a deck of cards. I'm not really worried about it anymore. I mean, I guess I'm worried about it on macro scale where like people want things to, the kind of people that like want things to be governed by AI, I think it's
yeah,
disgusting. But at the same time, like cybernetics in institutions basically kind of already operate that
of
way. It's just
course,
maybe
yeah,
isn't as tight a feedback loop as this would be. But like, but the whole like, oh my gosh, it's going to be an all-consuming AI. It's like, no, it's not. Like, it's gonna be a fucking printer. It's gonna be a photocopier.
I like to
And
think
I'm
that.
not I'm not. Well, yeah, and I'm not that worried about it. I think the bigger thing, and I think in the grand scheme, this just isn't that big of a deal. And again, as I'm even saying this, I get that like the point of view I'm having is I might even be like making a contrived point just so that we can disagree a little bit, because I get how this is a little bit naive, but like you know, it's again in a Marxist sense, like it just represents rising productivity,
Yeah.
and this idea of like a lot of the jobs that do things that AI would be doing are just no longer necessary, and
Hmm.
those people are ideally supposed to be able to enjoy the advantage of this.
Sure.
But of course, that isn't how it will work because it never is.
It works for some people right now. Like the early adopters, like if you're a coder and you still
Mhm.
have your job, you can use the AI to do all the coding for you. Like I have a buddy who he works from home and does coding, and he has an AI that writes like 95% of his code. He just has to go in
Yeah,
and
and
kind
that
of like identify stuff. And I
well,
don't
right.
like that. I don't like that as a job. Like I don't think coders like I think none of that's fuck all of that is what I think.
Fuck all of it.
But it is making his life easier, and he can right now enjoy the benefits of that until they just get rid of him as a coder in general.
Right, but and again, that's like a universal phenomenon,
Yeah.
right? Like it's the combine harvester of the knowledge worker,
Yeah.
right? The thing that I guess I do find contemptible and concerning is that you just see a lot of people. I don't know if you've seen this online, but these like creatively these people whose like creativity has been just like raped. They've just been
Mm,
mind raped into thinking like make posts online being like, dude, check out this video that I made with AI.
bro.
This is just the movie I always wanted. And it's like nothing. Like
Yeah.
it's fucking garbage.
That sucks,
And
dude.
the idea that like the idea that like somebody I know, and I'll keep it vague because like it's nobody that would listen to this, but I don't want to be mean or anything. But somebody I know is like talking about like I want to come up with a program. Um, well, people are already basically doing this. People are basically already doing this. I want to come up with an application of AI to replace a dungeon master in tabletop role playing games,
Mm,
and it's
that's not
like
fun.
well, no. First of all, the position of dungeon master doesn't represent a problem that needs to be designed out of the game.
Right. Yeah.
That's like just a fundamental misunderstanding. And also you just like don't understand. You just like don't understand like the role of it, right? Like
Yeah.
if we're playing the game, if we're playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? And I've arrived at this point somehow, this topic somehow. We're playing Dungeons and Dragons. You're playing Dungeons and Dragons with me, and I'm dungeon mastering, or you're playing a video game that's based on Dungeons and Dragons by yourself, right?
Hmm.
The difference is that the outcomes of your decisions in the video game are static, and
Yeah.
they will always be that way. And they're not tailor made to you. They're for everybody, right? They're for everyone that'll play this game, right? Whereas there's a loop between you and me where you
Yeah.
do something and then me filtering it through everything I know about this character and about you and almost more importantly about the vibe and the culture of
Mm,
the table that we're playing at in the game
yeah.
tonight. You can the fact that if you come over and your fucking dog just died, right? I'm like probably not gonna like throw some like random monster encounter at you that's like an undead dog kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a silly example, but like the whole point of it is that like one of the least important parts of playing a tabletop game with the dungeon master is just having someone to dispassionately enforce the rules.
Yeah.
That's like not really that. Now there's probably people that disagree with me, but that's not really that important because there's like a lot of games that have really really robust rules where you can practically play without the dungeon master,
Hmm.
right? The reason why you have your friend doing it is so that they can be they can be the gummy substance that fills in the cracks
Yeah.
with their fucking human capacity for creativity and
Mm.
being dynamic. And so
And
I
beyond
think
that,
that's
it's your fucking friend, and you're playing a game with them. And why
well
would you
well
automate out a fucking friend? What are you doing?
well no right and it reminds me of and so to zoom it back well right and so to zoom it back out right um think about like the mark of the author right
Mm,
um uh you know God is not present in creation in the way that like a lot of pagans talk about, like, oh man, like reality is our god and like we're all god and all that. It's like, no, he's not literally like substantially in this desk that I'm touching,
Right,
right?
yeah.
But he is in the same way that like when you sit down and you watch a movie by like P.T. Anderson, right? Part of the pleasure, and it's maybe not immediately apparent to you. Well, I think it's not, this isn't really that crazy of an idea, is that you're kind of learning about P.T. Anderson as an artist
Of course.
through Daniel Plainview and through Dirk Diggler and through all of these story arcs and all of these motifs. But like, Paul Thomas Anderson doesn't appear in these fucking
Yeah,
movies.
yeah.
He's not a character in the movie,
He's not
right?
fractal into all the pixels of the film, yeah.
Exactly. It's like in a literal way, God isn't a character in my life that's physically here. But in a much more real way than that, everything is a reflection of him
Yeah.
because he has the mark of authorship on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you take the mark of authorship out of art, and I know that like right wingers like to back themselves into this kind of dumb corner where they like overwhelmingly support death of the artist so that they can argue against the fucking media literacy leftists or whatever. But like no, like
Dude, no.
the hand of the and they have a point to a certain extent, but like the hand of the author is still fucking important.
Yeah.
And just this idea that I mean, I've never watched one all the way to the end, but just like these clips they have of like, check out this zombie, a post-apocalyptic movie I put together in AI, and it's just like a bunch of like close-up shots. Well, it's a bunch of like close-up shots in montage of a digitally constructed lookalike of Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah, yeah.
And like nothing actually, none of these shots actually lead into each other or like communicate with each other. And of course, like that will change in the future.
Yeah.
Right.
But it can only create a simulacra of what the art actually is meant to contain. It doesn't contain, like you're talking about, that essence. And it can't.
And so what it should do is it should get people thinking, kind of like how philosophers don't create the concepts, but they like create a way in which everyone can have ownership of the concept.
Yeah.
And then it helps them process the world and these things suddenly become visible to people. AI should, here, hold on. My dog's just been sitting at the door just scratching. Come here, boy. Come here, boy. Good boy. Good boy. I've like realized that my dog looks like, I've never seen a dog that looks more like a gooner than my dog.
Yeah, he does look like a gooner for real.
He for sure looks like a gooner. Anyways, no, like it should introduce people to this idea of like procedurally, and I use this word very particularly because I'm not talking about so-called AI. I'm even talking about Marvel movies as they're being made now. This like procedural based creation of art.
Yeah.
Right? Which we have already been in for like a couple decades, right? This procedural based creation of art is like vapid and it's like missing something.
It denies life and it denies art. Yes.
Exactly. And
God, I hate it so much. This is like the main bane of my existence, is just like
anti-human.
Anti-human shit. And then it's like it's working its way into art, and art is meant to be like a human pursuit exclusively, and meant to really connect you with that like sense of transcendence and connect. It's meant to give you a place where you can connect with that mark of authorship or that essence in a way that you don't in your everyday waking rational life. That's what art really, in a functional way, that's what it does. And people are leaning more and more, like you're saying, into this procedural kind of creation of art, which is not art. It's just like a massing together of things. Like it's just like putting together scenes. There's no art there. And it's like people are like making, you think about pop music. It's like you have a bunch of pop music. It's like repetitive stuff that like is easy to recognize and stuff. But is that art? Does it contain any real transcendent quality to it. It's like there's a lot of stuff like that, and AI really gets to the heart of it because, like you're saying, AI is it's not able to like commune with the creative consciousness and create this like transcendent work of art that can take you out of yourself and place you firmly within like, and also at the same time put you firmly within yourself. Like it can't do this kind of stuff. It can only show you things that look a certain way or create something that mimics a real great work of art. And in that sense, I'm not worried about AI. Like people, I was on a podcast the other day with the band, and people are like, "Hey, what do y'all think about AI? And like, are you worried about AI getting into the space of like musicianship and everything?" And it's like, I'm not worried about AI like taking my job as a musician or as an artist. I'm worried about people like just putting more and more of their own capability to do things into the hands of AI, and then us losing the ability to like the technical ability to actually communicate these creative thoughts and creative visions that we have through the medium because we've offshored all of our technical ability and all our actual like nitty gritty over to this AI.
Oh, you
And
cut
that's
out,
kind of
brother.
part of like what I think about with it.
You cut
Um,
you cut out for a second there. Hold on, go back.
I was just saying I don't worry about people being able to actually like I don't worry about AI taking over the creative aspect of art. I worry about people losing the technical ability to express the creative vision that they have because we're offshoring all of this stuff into the hands of AI. So this is
Yeah.
like where I would like, and I totally get it. It is like an efficiency thing. It's a convenience factor, AI and stuff. But like even to me, when you say, "Oh, well, I don't have to like massage the words to figure out this question as easily with AI," it's like, okay, word. Well, you're now taking away a level of like agency of your like brain having to think in that way, and it may be in that scenario that's not really an issue where it's like you don't know how to. You're losing the ability to massage Google. Who gives a fuck? It's Google. But in a lot of ways, this offshoring of our own intelligence into AI is detrimental for us to actually do the things that make us great as human beings, like art and stuff. And so, like, if people lose the ability to actually express themselves authentically through art because they don't have the technical ability anymore, they'll just try to run those concepts through AI processors and then just call that art. And it's not. And it's filtered through this, like, fucking demonic filter, basically, which is technology. Um, and so that's my whole thing with AI. Like, right now, I don't worry about AI as it is. I think you're right. I think it is like an aggregate of information. It only has the ability to do additive processes, really, and not
Mhm.
like the um, Byung Chul Han thing, where he's like, you have to be able to actually stop in order to create something new. You can't just continue to add, or else you'll never make anything new. You have to have that negative space. Well, I think that AI exists in that way where it doesn't have that negative space really. It's just kind of a computer data adding and conglomerating data together. Um, and it loses that touch of like the actual real transcendent. And I think that as humans, we're gonna slowly lose our ability to really connect with what is true and transcendent in life. And I think that these things they create like static in the system to where you can't really tap into what the real fucking vibration of life and of God and like truth and goodness and beauty. And I think that all of this like kind of shit in a way, like technology and AI stuff, it keeps us from that in meaningful ways. And you can get through it still and you can work your way to it. But as we get more and more overloaded with it, we'll be further and further away from that real spark. And
I think about again, I'm gonna I'm gonna bring it back to a D&D example, but I quite like this example, which is orcs.
mhm,
Okay, orcs. Okay, orcs are constantly talked about in this fucking. It's like an ongoing struggle session in tabletop role playing games because they're inherently evil, right? They're
mhm,
inherently evil, and you can kind of already figure out where this is going. Um, and progressives do the thing where they go, well, like that's problematic because they're like inspired uh, by black people. You know, we need to like stop. We need to stop this, right? And then like the trad people who are correct but who don't really get any attention in the conversation, as a framing device, are like, what the fuck are you even talking about? You're the one that's saying they're evoking black
Yeah.
people. What they're actually doing is they're not based on anything in the real world. What they are is they're kind of like a representation of an abstract concept of evil,
Yeah.
right? So what if you took, and this is the magic of fiction, right? What if you took this idea that exists that motivates people and drives people in the real world, and then had it manifest as a literal physical thing in your fantasy world, right? um Dragons are greedy. Dragons are greedy,
Hmm.
right? Shit like that. Dragons eat treasure because they're greedy fucks. um but you see this kind of like this whole like kind of swath of people who are materialists,
Yeah.
right? Only able to connect this stuff as basically being, oh, well, this is a direct analog of this real world thing, or this is a
Hmm.
direct analog of this real world thing. And like that already is basically just AI brained.
Yes.
And this idea that I like this example because it's a firm, isolated example of like the transcendent in storytelling, right? Uh, like there's kind of a thought and a feeling that we all experience that makes it so that we instantly connect with orcs,
Yeah.
not because we've seen people that look like orcs, right? Or because we've had experiences that were like, oh man, maybe that was an orc I was encountering.
In the gas
Maybe
station
George
checkout
Floyd was a
line.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe George Floyd was an orc. It's like, no, you're actually being kind of racist
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not that. It's just it. What is the line? What is the line in Two Towers? It's like what is a man to do when confronted with such reckless hate?
Yeah.
Right. That is the explanation of what an orc is.
Hmm.
Right. That is the explanation of what an orc is. Is it's just hatred and chaotic destruction. It's not a kind of person.
Yeah.
It's not sub-Saharan Africans. It's not any of that stuff. Stop thinking it's that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um and that's just the kind of like A to B uh like A B rhyme structure
Yes.
type style of thinking that that learned language models produce
Yes.
unfailingly. And the kind of people, these people saying this kind of stuff are also probably the same kind of people that watch these fucking videos and be like, whoa, we won't even need movie studios
Yeah.
anymore
Yeah.
pretty soon. And it's like, dude, I'm sorry, like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
um
Good luck trying to make a fucking like Blue Velvet or something with AI. What are you talking about? Like you can't. You just can't do stuff like that. It
that
doesn't.
would just be AI porn.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. It's something real dark too.
Yeah, some real fucking sickos, some twisted up freaks.
But that's my thing. I think you're right in that it produces this lack of conceptual fluency. Like this is something that we've talked about in the past, where it's like people are just not able. Like, yeah, you're just going A to B. Like you're not actually getting the content of what's happening here. You're just looking at the orc. And then you're only able to be like, oh, it looks like this other thing. Not like, oh, what does this represent? And what is it communicating to me at a deeper level? Um, and I worry about that. And then to me, the AI thing is like, I mean, we're going to keep pouring we have a vision of what AI is in our heads already. It's like hyperstition. It's like it's been put into our heads. AI is like, it isn't just an aggregate of information. It's something beyond that. And we're going to work until we can make that. And I don't think that it means it's going to create real, true other life form or whatever, but it's going to create this simulacra of that and of truth that is going to be difficult to discern for a lot of people, and it's going to get us trapped in a world like that. Like Capital wants fucking robots. Like it just wants it. That's where like that's what it wants to build and make down the line. It's like tech kind of body kind of like this thing, and it wants that, and I think that's where we're heading. And my concern with it is that like not where it's at now, or I'm not worried about like ChatGPT stealing coders' jobs or whatever. And I think that there is a window where you could say like maybe we could do a level of the fully automated space luxury communism, whatever the hell. Like that, I guess that's like one thing. That's not the way it's gonna go though. And I mean, maybe it does, and maybe it's like Gaza. Maybe the Gazas can go play patty cake with the fucking Israelis, and they can all hang out kumbaya, and maybe the computers can do jobs for us, and we can sit around on our ass and have families. But I don't think that's what it's going to be, and that's like my concern with it. I do think that there is a road for like a reaction. I'm just kind of full on a tech reactionary, I think, and I'm just going to own up to it. Like,
Oh, you're a Luddite.
yeah, full on. I think I don't think there's anything to do about it. Like I think it's coming, but I think that it's going to be a negative, and I think that if you continue to invest in that and dive further into that world, that simulacra, you're going to get further and further away from being a real human being and living a real human life. And I think that we're kind of at a crossroads where it's like I think AI is going to continue to not even I use that as like a stand-in for technology as a whole, but I think technology as a whole is going to continue to advance, and I think we're going to continue to offshore our intelligence, our productive intelligence, as far as whatever usefulness capital can get out of it. We're going to continue to offshore that onto these machines and onto AI and onto computer systems and stuff, and eventually robot bodies or whatever. And we're going to continue to do that. And there is maybe some little sliver of a future that could exist where when that happens and we're kind of no longer under the yoke of this like compulsion towards capital production, maybe we can like really learn what it means to be a real human being that's back in nature with the rest of the whole everything, and we can maybe really learn how to really live human lives that aren't in service of this fucking demonic power that's just like assign value to things, exhume it out of the earth, trade it around, mass capital. Maybe we can learn something like that, but it's going to be like that's not going to be the thing for most of the population, and it's going to be really negative in general. And so like i I don't know, I have a pessimistic outlook towards the future of technology and AI in general. That's like just looking at the way that the arc of history goes in capital, it's like it wants advanced AI technology, and it's going to do whatever it takes to build that. And we can like put up roadblocks in it, or we can hope that we're going to maybe shift in a certain way, but I just don't know that it's gonna go that way for us. And so I think like for me, my thing is like we gotta divest in some meaningful capacity and tap into what really makes us human. Creating art, creating like connection and community, creating
Mhm.
storytelling, stuff that's transcendent, connecting with spirit and with God, and like trying to be a steward to the earth around us. That kind of thing can get us back in touch with what it really means to be a part of all of it. And maybe if technology advances to such a capacity where it leaves us kind of alone, then maybe we can be in the thrall of it all again and almost be kind of like a state of like the noble savage or something in some capacity, where we're kind of almost in an Eden kind of state where we're back into some kind of sense. Um, but I don't really know. I don't know that that's the thing, but I think that's like that's what we have to try to shoot for, because I don't think that trying to navigate technology as far as like we can use it for our own ends, I think it's going to use us more than we're using it in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, or at the very, very least, I'll say maybe as like a more moderate position. Like, I think that kind of like the logic of like a Jeffersonian democracy would apply here, where it's like, maybe there is a situation where we can wield it and we can, in a very precarious and delicate way, maintain control of it. But that requires a population and at the very least, like a stratified elite that are so well developed in like virtue and
Yeah,
personal discipline and just virtue
yeah,
that they're able to handle such a such a potentially disruptive thing
mm-hmm,
like democracy or something, right? um and we don't have that, we don't really
yeah,
have that. So I tend to agree with you. I don't really know that I believe in some kind of like a glorious state of nature.
Yeah, I don't
But yeah,
really
I mean,
mean that. I just mean more so like we can maybe like the people who are left behind when technology like takes the productive capability of intelligence and launches off planet or whatever, the people that are left behind in the wreckage can like hopefully actually have more time to do things and like really connect with what maybe our real human potential could be without that kind of yoke upon us. And I don't mean that like, oh, we're using it like it frees up and we're getting the luxury communism, but more so like we just don't have that bug in our brain anymore, so maybe we can figure something else out. But in order to do that, we're going to have to like hunker down and like I said, I think reconnect with things that really make us human so that we don't lose ourselves in the whole process. Because people are going to be chopping themselves up and putting themselves into the machine, merging with the machine. We're already heading that way. I mean, it's just, I really think that it's just going to be more and more and more of that. We've been making these, we know what's coming in our subconscious, I think 100%. And I think that there's really like, we've reached a point where back in the day, you had a bunch of like tech, a bunch of dystopian tech films and stuff that were like, this is what's going to happen and blah, blah, blah. And now it's just kind of like, we're past that because everyone's like, what are you going to do about it? I think we're just kind of heading towards not like anything that showed up in the Matrix or whatever. I don't think that's what it's going to be. But I think that some form of advanced technology kind of running things in us merging with it is where we're heading. And I think that I would rather be on a side of things that's like, I'm not going to merge. I'm going to actually learn how to like sit around a campfire with my loved ones, or I'm going to like learn how to like paint a picture that expresses an emotion to someone around me, that kind of thing, more so than like I'm going to learn how to get 8 more gigs of storage in my brain.
well, this is also like this has also been part of this has always also been kind of what's at the heart of like what I personally consider for myself as my own little self label, even though I know it's very navel gazing. My kind of idea of like kind of like a postmodern reactionary Marxism,
Yeah.
which is like it always does eventually come back to like no, empowering people to control their own destiny.
Yeah.
Um, and not just being this dehumanized, fungible economic unit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and obviously, I think that like a lot of like Marxist movements have resulted
The
in
opposite.
exactly that. Yeah, exactly that. This hyper materialistic, dehumanized thing. But like at the end of the day, like owning your productive labor and having that be the guiding beacon as opposed to basically just like market
Yeah.
functions. Again, it's the most uh, you know science. I love science, STEM brained ruling order shit imaginable, as opposed to like you know. I always think about in like Revolt of the Elite by Christopher Lasch. He always talks about, and this is so central. He talks about like you know in kind of like the middle of like America's history, we were kind of like the it was kind of like the pride of our culture and everything that Europeans couldn't really hold a candle to, is the fact that we had the average everyman worker had like a little home bookshelf of which he was quite well read and well educated,
Yeah.
relative to like the productive classes in Europe, who were like still very much in this like kind of stratified feudalistic social order. And that was like a tremendous achievement of ours, right? And that really kind of in a way, I'm not to digress, but like in a way, like just this like we kind of traded that for this fable of like upward mobility,
Yeah.
which has actually kind of given us kind of not what we want at all.
Mm-hmm.
um and yeah, just like having dignity and a system that realizes that free will and freedom that's bestowed in us by being created in the image of God,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just being a little fucking drone ant, like in you know late Soviet Russia,
Yeah.
or I would say late neoliberal United States.
Yes.
and systems like that just aren't really actually built for. They're not built to house people. They're
Mm-hmm.
built to house like techno capital.
Yep.
Um, and I think that I think
Yeah.
that that's the whole thing, and I think that that ties back to uh, our aspirational fan fiction about Trump stabbing Elon in the back,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think that comes back to trepidations about Peter Thiel,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that comes back to rejecting the fucking endless Obama administration and this kind of this technocratic world order, which and I'll still say like even with the Musk stuff, it still just needs to be understood. Um, like I could have conversations with normie libs I know where I would go like, man, I just don't like this stuff with Musk, yada yada, and they would maybe make the mistake of going like, oh, well, you get what you voted for, and they will not fucking understand that it's still like, no, you don't get it. Like this is a problem, but there was like no other option,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like the only other option was the ultimate thing that we're pushing back against, which is stasis, like a
Yes.
historical state of stasis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that needs to be totally smashed. And I think we've gotten pretty good. We've got a pretty good indication that's the orders of the day and that that's being carried out. Um,
Yeah. Well, the thing
but yeah, just go ahead.
the
Sorry.
thing with the Trump camp, and specifically with like the inclusion of like someone like JD Vance kind of coming on board and what he brings to it and his kind of view or whatever, and as well as like RFK and stuff, is that it's more like oriented towards humans rather than techno capital, and at least in some capacity, um, and and it is like you're saying, it's like taking a step versus standing still. And we've been standing still, just sinking into the abyss for the longest time. And it's like someone's taking a step, and it might take us in a step that you maybe think is the wrong direction, but we got it to get out of the quicksand at some capacity. And so that's what I see as the hope as far as the Trump camp goes. But that's like what it was interesting to me is that with JD Vance and also Trump, even it is more oriented towards like some vision of humans and humanity and like that people nested within that system rather than like just this faceless kind of techno capital conglomeration. And I'd like to see that really come to the fruition because that's what I'm at the end of the day talking about. Is we just need system. We need a cosmology that has God in the center, and then it's like humans are linked to that in a meaningful capacity, and then that links to the rest of the like of existence, and then we can
and
like
and 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 in the context of what we're talking about here, sorry to cut you off, but just before it slips out of my mind, like in the context of what we're talking about here, like one of the most there's a lot of reasons for that, and like and you can probably take a couple good guesses as to like what I mean by that as a Catholic, but specifically in this context, one of the non-theological reasons why Christianity is such a good, or just really I guess any most religions would work
just
here
connect to spirit.
is, well, it's just that it it is the most totalizing and viable structure that pushes directly against like market
Yeah.
efficiency, right? Like um my wife and I have been talking about this a lot of like some relatives of ours talked about how they don't like to go eat out at their favorite restaurant on the Lord's Day. And we're like, wait, what? Like, why? Like, that's so silly, right? And they're like, well, like, if you think about it, and me and my wife have been talking about this because it became one of these things where it's like, we were kind of joking about it because it was so silly. And now we're like thinking about it and we're like, fuck, they had like a really good point.
Yeah.
Which is, it's like, out of all the commandments, it's like the longest one that you don't work
Mm.
on Sunday, right? And but not only do you not work, but like all of your servants don't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
And all the people that serve you, right? Now I'm not saying that like the people at my favorite restaurant are my servants, but they're serving you, right? They're
Hmm.
literally servers, right? And like everybody should fucking take a fucking rest,
Yeah.
right? Um that that, you know what I mean? Almost just that perfectly encapsulated right there
Hmm.
is maybe the best example distilled of kind of what I'm talking about here, where it's just like, no, you just hack the system,
Yeah.
you know? Full stop. Full stop. There is nothing internal to the market that informs it to do anything remotely like that,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Now that's what the labor movement uh, existed for, right? But the labor movement's fucking dead,
Yeah.
right? Half the labor movement is speaking at the RNC, and half the labor movement is getting double mastectomies, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that they're pretty divided,
Mhm.
right? I don't think that they're monolithic and able to really collectively bargain, we'll
Yeah.
say, to a certain extent. I don't want to act like too dramatic about it. I mean, unions are still holding an okay amount of power,
Well,
but
that's the social
um,
technology that's just built in inherently into the religion, like into these kind of traditions where it's like now we can look at it and be like, oh yeah, it's providing a negative space to where like you have a chance to catch your breath and connect with something that's beyond you and stuff because in the thrall of it all, you can't really, and especially the way that modern productivity and stuff is pushed upon you and all the different overstimulation you can get from all sorts of devices or whatever. um, just taking a break and like being like you're not working on this day, you're not whatever, it forces you that negative space where like capital can no longer kind of just lead you around like a dog. And yeah, it does, like you said, it's kind of overrides the system, which is like a very high-minded social technology that's just inherently built into this kind of tradition and understanding of looking at the world that is built into Christianity or Judaism or whatever. And I mean, obviously, a lot of thing with Jesus is like he came around and was like, well, it's not like doesn't need to be strictly if your neighbor's hurting on the Sabbath, you can help your fucking neighbor on the Sabbath, like that kind of thing. To where it's like you don't want to let the good be the enemy of or the whatever the better be the enemy of the good. You want to like do what you can still that's good, but also like follow these things because they do have real meaning within them. And I think that people have kind of moved past it where it's like, oh well, he's come and he's shattered the traditional significance of a lot of these rituals that were in place that were just kind of arcane, like the Sabbath. And so then the Sabbath loses some of its teeth a little bit, because I think it's kind of a misunderstanding where it's like I don't think that you're not supposed to have a Sabbath, but I think it's more so like the emphasis on it is maybe not where God is. It's more so like you got to be a little bit more flexible, but there is something very important happening there. You should
if
still,
you can't have that negative space in your life, like you're talking about, if you can't have that negative space in your life and just sit and just be in existence for a bit,
yeah,
I'm not saying you can't have like a spiritual component uh, in your life,
it's hard.
but like it's fucking hard, dude. There's a reason why people talk about meditating in silence.
Yeah.
You know, um, it's hard to really like hear God
Mm-hmm.
when you're fucking in the fucking lost in translation fucking Shibuya Japan level of just being inundated with just sensory overload. You can't do that, and that's what the rational brain wants us to do, right?
Definitely.
That's the rational reaction to this fishbowl we're in. And I find myself doing that sometimes too. It's just like I'm going around the house, I'm getting like chores done and stuff like that, and I just need to have my Bluetooth headphones in, constantly listening to something, watching something,
Yeah.
and it's like, and it's especially dramatic for me too, because I mean, I just like I've struggled with addiction before,
Mm-hmm.
so I just feel or maybe I should more accurately say, like I'm a successful end result of this machine.
Yeah.
I find myself just, oh, of course I can't just sit in silence, of course I can't do that, and and I mean, like David Foster Wallace talked about this back in the day, of just being like, even like among like incredibly well known and accomplished academics, like people really struggle and have a great fear of just sitting down alone in a quiet room and reading.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like I do,
Yeah.
but everyone kind of pretends they don't, and everyone kind of pretends that they aren't just like little content gooners,
Yeah.
like that, like fucking just kind of get up out of their little like slovenly pit and go to social functions and act like they haven't just watched a bunch of YouTube slop.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and it's so easy to see now in this generation. And that's what I'm saying. Like, as technology progresses, we get caught more and more in the simulacra that's kind of like keeping us, it's just putting more and more static in the system and making it so we can't really ever reach those moments of silence, or it's much harder to, because we're now creating physical dependencies upon like dopamine loops that we're getting from scrolling or from hitting the vape or from fucking doing any number of things. And that's why you see so many people, especially in younger generations, that are just so restless legs all the
Fried.
time. Yeah, fried, literally fucking
Fucking
ate up and
fried, dude.
fried. And it's,
Dude, I went to church yesterday and I'm sitting there like, this is a funny thing that occurred to me where, I'm sitting there with the baby and when she kind of like gets a little restless, I mean, this isn't fucking groundbreaking. I just sit her on my knee and I bounce my knee,
oh yeah.
right? And I call it, we're doing bonanza, right? She's a little cow poke and she's riding a horse, right? Um, and I'm like, oh man, I'm finding that just having this little ADHD outlet of bouncing my foot up and down
Mm-hmm.
is like making it so that I can pay better attention to the mass.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, dude, I'm just this fucking ADHD fucking iPad baby,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um 100%.
I think that that's like the thing with the Byung Chul Han that really connected with me so much, and that's why I keep coming back to it. But I think that those moments of silence and stuff, those are built, like I think almost all rituals, a lot of the rituals that are built into religions, at least to like quote unquote true religions or whatever, fundamentally are built to get you to that point of silence and that stillness. Like, doing the rosary and over again and stuff, it gets you like, you get kind of to a moment where you're blocking things out except for that one thing, and you're kind of coming into contact with that stillness for a moment. And I think that that's kind of what, like, all of those things are like, it's like a technology that's built into it to get you to be able to skirt off all of this shit that's around you, cumbersome stuff, and to get just to a moment of stillness and quiet so you can connect with that. I mean, that's like in
Yep.
the Bible, it's like, be still and know that I am with you. And like that kind of shit, it's like, that's where it comes from. And everything in our lives is getting us further and further away from those moments of stillness. And that's like, it makes it harder and harder to have a healthy relationship with everything around you, because you no longer have the connection to the source that's really informing that kind of that way of living. um
So I was this is maybe like a little bit of a stretch, but it's just like it's in my mind right now. So I'm at night for our wind down routine. I've been reading the Gospel of Matthew to my daughter,
hmm
and I feel like that's like if you're gonna start anywhere besides the Psalms,
hmm
right? Like Matthew's a great. I mean, it's almost it's kind of the Cliff's Notes a little
yeah,
bit, right? Just
definitely.
boom, boom. It's like the Tom Petty greatest hits album of the
Yeah.
Bible. And we're getting through it, and I'm thinking about like Christ being in the desert
hmm
and the devil coming to him,
hmm
right? And he's in the desert for just kind of the subtext of it a little bit, right? Where it's like, yes, he's trusting in God and he's saying no to the devil and all that stuff, right? But like he's in the desert for like 40 fucking days, right? And the devil is like, I will give you all of these things that you want right now.
hmm
Hey, I'm showing up. I can give you all these easy, amazing, incredible things, and not just give them to you, but like it's here for the taking. I'll deliver it to you now, right?
hmm
And he just, and this is an example of this the of Christ. It's right in front of him, right? It's right in front of him, and it's here, and it's now, and it's flashy, and he can rule over all these people, and he can fucking fly, and he can do all these things. Um, but in the back of his head, it's that keeping the faith and that like I know the macro what's good, and it's not present right now, and it won't be instant, but I know what is good ultimately,
yeah.
and I'm gonna stick with that. And I feel that a little bit when it is that like, all right, like a lot of stuff to do today, like a lot of stuff to go to the gym, keep investing in long-term stuff to make a better life for yourself, and then just like boom, flashing lights, watch porn, play video games,
Yeah.
blah 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 blah
Yeah.
blah, right? Eat junk food, instant gratification, and it's just like, no,
Yep.
not right now, Satan.
hmm hmm
Um, and yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's I had to share that because I was kind of just bouncing around in my head.
No, that's it for sure. It's like he returns to the solace and the like stillness of the desert and the peace in that and his connection with like the Lord through that. And instead of taking, like you're saying, these easy way outs, these kind of instant gratification things. I mean, that's the thing. It's like that's what's so beautiful about the gospel, dude. It's just built like you can look into it now, and it speaks so much to the modern condition, and it's timeless. And yeah, man. But
Well,
that's
I mean, one of the aspects of it too is just that it in that way that you're describing, it breaks the feeling that we all have as subjects in this time in history of being totally marooned and cut off from the rest of history.
yeah.
It completely solves that by just having it's evergreen,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah, if we had people
That's
if
huge.
we had people in charge, like getting back to what you're saying about virtue and stuff like that, if we had people in charge who were truly in touch with that and had a real high level of virtue and stuff, and then maybe we could maybe kind of be able to engage with these things at a higher level, like with rise of technology and stuff in a healthier way that can center God and can center goodness and beauty and truth and use it to highlight that or and that kind of thing. Um, I do believe that we could perhaps do that, but I don't know that that's like a. I'm not sure that's a path that we're on, unfortunately. Um, but I think that you can use that for yourself to be able to, navigate what does come on your own. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's my thing. It's like I think if we reconnected with that, if we could somehow reconnect with spirit at like a societal level and have a healthier cosmology, then maybe technology wouldn't be as much of a problem as it is now. Um, but it just seems to me like that's kind of the thing. It's like that's what I keep preaching is that we've got to reconnect with that. And I think the best path for it and within our culture is Christianity, at least like for me, because that's what I resonate with at a cultural level. But I think there's other ways to do it that can also have positive, healthy effects in that way. But we have to somehow reconnect with spirit because that's the only way that we can have any hope of like integrating technology in a way that doesn't just completely denigrate what it means to be a human and destroy everything around us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, go to church and fucking read the book and shit, dude.
Dude, go to church and read the book and shit, dude. You sound exactly like my priest.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I bet she'd been going to seminary. You didn't know.
Hell yeah.
These people are sick. This is obviously a very, very sick individual.
These people are the sickest of them all. These people are sick. They are sick. And you better get used to hearing it.
These people are sick.